This episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial by going to audible.com/Andrew. And by Indochino. Get any premium Indochino suit for just $3.89 at Indochino.com when you enter in the code GFQ at checkout.
What's the take?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Major Zarian. Of course, I'm joined by Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Everything's fine. Everything's good.
This is one of those rare days where I had like enough sleep the night before.
Yeah, you seem it. Normally, it starts off with, you don't know what happened. But today, you look healthy. You look good.
Yeah.
You look happy.
I don't know how to explain that because I sleep terribly. But last night I slept for 8 hours like a normal human being.
Yeah, I'm personally buried in work this week. So it's a never-ending battle for me. This entire week has been a disaster when it comes to working and securing ad deals and just doing upgrades over here. I don't know if you guys could see it, but we have a phone. We have a weird-looking phone here with many, many lines. This is for our new 6-line phone system that we're bringing into the studio. And we're going to be taking phone calls. And I think you and Brad are also going to incorporate this in some way.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things happening. So I've been a lot of moving parts, which normally when that happens, it doesn't really work out too easily. So it's going to take a little bit, but we have a lot of new things coming. Guys, we do have a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about the declining PC market with Paul. We tend to do this every now and then, but it's been 5 years and declining. And it doesn't seem like it's getting better. So I want to touch on that and see where the turnaround would possibly be for the PC market.
It's getting less bad.
It is getting less bad, yeah.
Does that count a slowdown in the slowdown?
It's quite possible that there is a slowdown in the slowdown, which is a positive. But before we do that, Paul, let's take a minute and talk about our sponsor, and that's Indochino. Get any premium Indochino suit for just $3.89 at Indochino.com when you enter in the code GFQ at checkout. That's 50% off the regular price. It's made to measure. It's a premium suit. So how this works, it's really cool. You could either walk into an Indochino store if there's one in your area. If you're from New York City, you could walk into one. They take your measurements. You could customize the suit from the lapels to the jacket lining and a lot more customization you could do. You could pick from hundreds of fabrics. This is really awesome, especially for someone like me that likes to kind of customize this stuff. And you know, like I'm not that tall, Paul. I don't know if you know that about me. I'm 5'9". I used to be 5'10", but because of my back issues.
Shrinking?
Yeah, because of my back problems, I've actually shrunk like a half an inch. It's terrible.
I'm sorry. That's not good.
Yeah, the ongoing joke with my brother is that he constantly tells people that I wear lifts in my shoes, and that is not true at all. It's a lie.
No, the lifts are in your hair.
They're in my hair. Yeah, the lift is in my hair, actually. Actually, this just snaps off.
It's like the Fletch joke. You know, he's like 6'9", 6'10" with the afro or whatever.
Yeah. And that's how I get the couple inches to hit me to 5'10", 5'11". But the problem that I have is that if I walk into a store, like let's say one of those, men's stores that you could buy a suit at, which you're not customizing really from them, I have a problem with the length. It never fits right. With Indochino, no problem at all. They customize everything for you. You can walk into the store, or if you don't have a store by you, you can submit your body measurements. They tell you how to do it online. You place your order and you wait, and it arrives in just 4 weeks. And the cool thing is they have a great discount. If you use the promo code GFQ on any premium suit, you get it for $3.89 and free shipping. That's unbelievable. Indochino.com. Use the code GFQ at checkout. I want to thank Indochino for supporting the show and, of course, supporting the GFQ network. I actually have to. I ordered my t-shirt. My button down from them. I took the measurements, and I have to order a suit now because I really like the fact that I could customize the inside of the lining. I'm big on those things. My obsessive compulsiveness kicks in, and now I want one of these. So Indochino.com, everybody.
Indochino, not to be confused with Indochina.
Indochina. No, you are not getting this from Indochina. It's not Indochina. It's Indochino. Sure. Let's take a moment and discuss the declining PC market.
It's
5 years and counting. It's been dropping. It's been slowed down, like you said, the decline in the market, but it's a very interesting world that we're in, and there's a couple factors as to why the PC market is declining. But why is the PC market declining, Paul?
Well, Andrew, there are a couple of factors.
Yeah.
As you note. I mean, I think, first of all, it's been declining since 2011, right? So the high point in unit sales for the year was about 365 million units. This year, we hit just about 265 million units. So a 100 million unit decline, or I don't know what that is, 30%, somewhere in there, over whatever that is, 5 years. That's tough. The question is where it's going to level out, or if it levels out. I think it does. I think we're always going to be on a slow decline, but I don't think it's going to be as steep maybe as it has been. I think we've kind of settled in roughly to where it is. But anyway, but to your point, I mean, the reasons for it, I mean, there are many. There's been a movement to more mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. And if you think about the types of things we had to do on a PC 6-7 years ago, we can do a lot of that stuff on mobile devices, and we do because those things are with us in our pocket, or in our bag, and they're with us every day, all the time. That makes sense. Related to that, even the people who do still use PCs use them a lot less, because the times when you have to crack open that laptop or turn on the desktop PC, maybe because you have to write something long form or work in Excel on a big screen, whatever it might be, is fewer and far between, right, than it was before. Because again, we're doing most stuff on mobile devices. But I think the sort of undercredited part of this is PCs are better made than they used to be, right?
And that was going to be my point. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you tie the like lower usage per device with the fact that they're of higher quality, you get into this situation where, what I should also say, tied to the fact that computing capabilities are not jumping exponentially every year. I mean, the difference between a computer today and 5 years ago for an average person is not that great. And as good as Windows 10 is, the difference in using Windows 10 versus, say, Windows 7 or Windows 8, whatever, is really not that great, to the average individual. And they don't necessarily see the value in paying hundreds of dollars for a new computer. So there are new types of devices that are kind of bridging the gap. There's Chromebooks, which are basically computers, or are computers. We'll call them computers. And then there are kind of those pseudo computer devices like iPad Pro, or the Android or Chromebook 2-in-1 devices that kind of bridge the gap between tablet and PC too. So I think these things combined, and just the general trends we've already seen are, will cause a kind of basic downward trend over time. But hopefully it, moves a lot slower than it has.
So what you're saying is that the iPad did not kill the PC market?
No. In fact, the sales of iPad have fallen for over 2.5 years now. So
you're absolutely right in this, right? People use their computers less. When they do use it, they're using it for, like, say, long word processing or something else, and these machines are not being used as much. But the concept of buying a mid to high range desktop or laptop, for example, right? It really goes a long way. And people are going to say, Andrew, that's not always the case. Well, I'm going to tell you my use case, right? Like, I'm somebody that always upgrades and always gets the newest, except for when it comes to my laptop. My MacBook, I bought in 2011, and I used it until I broke it. And I used it until 2016. That's 5 years I got out of it. If I change, what happened was the motherboard actually went, so I had to replace it. But if it hadn't broke, I probably would be using it right now, and I probably would have been fine. Because technically, and I'm someone that measures the CPU usage, right? Like, I'm looking at it right now. I have an app, and I could see how much CPU usage Google is using or Tweetbot is using. Most people don't think that way. They don't look at the CPU usage. They use something until it dies. I know for a lot of other people, they look at to see if it's struggling when they use Skype or something else, but most people don't think that way. If I was able to get around with my MacBook Pro, and I spend about almost $2,000 on it, it should last me quite a few years, right? I shouldn't be replacing every 2 years. If I could get away with using it like that, most people they don't even care. They're just using it until it breaks. And like you said, PCs are made much better.
Yeah. It's the software too, when you think about it. Something like Microsoft Office, there are people, I was just at a doctor's office. I was kind of fascinated by the software they had on there, but on their computers. But it was Windows 7 based, whatever. I wasn't sure what exactly. Office 2010, I think it was, but some older version of Office. And realistically speaking, Office 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016. Obviously we've had a move to that kind of ribbon-based UI, but
Sure.
Most people, I don't think they even register this stuff.
What version of Office they're using?
Yeah, whatever. Most people, they're not technical writers. They're not book authors. They're not, even, I actually am both of those things, but even I would never use 1/100th of the features in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
So I think for most people, it's like, whatever they have works fine. I think that's one of the things that makes the transition to something like Google Docs for a lot of people, or if you're in the Apple world, even to something like the iWorks apps, is like, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't really matter to most people because those things all work okay.
Well, the other thing, let's look at this also, right? There are a lot of people that say that, these lower end machines. Someone said in the chat room that their father constantly buys these lower end laptops or lower end desktops, and they spend a couple $100 and it lasts them 2 or 3 years. Those laptops and desktops, those lower end Atom based processors, or a number of those lower end devices, that is actually a reason, and this is my theory to why these mid-range and upper mid-range laptops and desktops last you longer. Software makers now have to make software to run on these devices, so it's far more efficient.
This is a giant, it's not a virtuous cycle, but it's like the opposite of that, but it's still a circle.
Yeah.
Where this combination of factors has triggered Microsoft lowering the license costs on Windows to better compete with things like Chromebook, PC makers making those lower end laptops, like you were saying, because, volume matters and whatever. And software makers knowing this are tailoring their software to make sure that they run correctly on such devices. And then you get into this weird cycle where we're kind of talking about like good enough computing, which I've always been kind of fascinated by. But it really is good enough computing for most people, right?
Yeah.
I know the people listening to this are like, yeah, whatever.
No. I think it makes sense
for them, sure.
I was talking to one of my friends. He's in the IT world, and he's in charge of massive orders for his company. I mean, massive orders. We're not talking 100 computers. We're talking thousands of computers for his large company. Yeah. And he had a very interesting theory. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago about how, upgrading PCs and how it works. He said, Andrew, I 100% believe that most companies are not jumping to upgrade anymore. I said, well, when was the last time you felt that they had to? And he said,
I was going to say,
it's not
when exactly were they jumping?
He said Windows Vista was the one massive upgrade he saw from all of his IT friends that were making. Windows Vista was humongous for them because the software itself was such a hog and they were running older machines, obviously, so they all jumped to do the upgrade. They gradually updated to Windows 7, but because Windows itself has gotten so much more refined as an operating system, 10% here, 10% there, it handles video much better. It has all these internal features that you normally would have to run applications for. The need to, every time Windows comes out, to jump and upgrade to buy a new computer to run Windows does not exist anymore.
Andrew, you are a perceptive human being.
Oh, thank you.
Because let me give you some facts to back up what you just said.
I'm pulling this all out of my ass. So
no, you're right. I don't know for Windows 10. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that the system requirements for Windows went down. Between Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1. They all had lower hardware requirements than their predecessors. And you're right. Windows Vista was that pinnacle, right? Because up to that time, Microsoft was under a lot of pressure from customers, enthusiasts, but just normal customers who saw things on the Apple side where Apple was doing things like GPU-based rendering of graphics and had transparency effects in the UI.
And that plays such a big factor on the performance. I mean, tremendous. It's way more than most people because we deal with a lot of video. Well, obviously.
No, by the way, it does. But the thing you got to remember when you go back to 2003 to 2005, before Windows Vista came out, when they were working on this thing, when it was still called when it was still called Longhorn, we didn't have PCs that could run that stuff. In other words, all PCs in the market in that day, in order to run those kinds of graphics, needed a dedicated graphics card.
Yeah.
And Intel's integrated graphics on their chipsets were not good enough. In fact, right when Vista came out, that was one of the weird things. You could buy a low-end computer with integrated graphics, and it could not run the arrow effects.
So you have to turn it
in
off,
Windows Vista. It was not powerful enough. Obviously, that is no longer the case. And
I still turn it off, by the way. I'm still one of these.
Right. Well, okay, but today, everyone has a computer that can run this kind of stuff, and being able to offload stuff from the CPU to the GPU is huge. It's huge for performance, but it's also huge for battery life. And so that kind of issue, like Apple controls the Mac market, so they can ensure that most of the computers they sell all run that stuff is no problem.
Yeah.
On the PC side, what we were dealing with 10 years ago was a legacy base of, almost a billion computers or whatever it was, hundreds of millions, not none of which, but only a small percentage of which were capable of running those graphics.
Yeah.
And that was the
handover to 64-bit also was not as smooth as imagined.
No, but that by comparison, that actually went okay. But Windows Vista arrived late. It landed with a thud. A lot of people didn't like it because of this graphical thing we're talking about. But that was the hump. Like once you get over that hump, it's been kind of clear sailing ever since from a baseline specs perspective, right? Like no one.
Yeah. I'm going to give
no
you
one
two
has to worry
examples
about
here.
recommended specs.
When we started doing the show, Windows 7 was coming out. Think about that.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Windows 7 was coming out. First time you ever did the show. So we've been doing this a long time. A good measure for me to obviously it's not the perfect measure for everybody, but the way that I measure to see if the operating system itself is, those stats that they give, they say 10% faster or 15% faster. If it's BS or not, I honestly go based on my production software. I could see right now, I'm monitoring how much CPU we're using, how much GPU we're using, how much the application is using.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Sorry.
Yeah.
When I talk, does the GPU usage go up?
Oh, it shoots up all the way.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All the way. It's at 120% right now.
I just want to make sure everyone understands I understand technology.
Yeah.
But, okay,
that's how it works, actually. So I'm looking at it right now. There are two factors here. One, software gets better, right? Let's say the operating system. With Windows 7, I was averaging about 45% CPU usage when we did this show with the same exact software.
Okay.
When we went to Windows 10, it drastically dropped by half.
Now, Andrew, I will once again prove how perceptive you are by providing you with another fact.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of development from Windows Vista, and actually Windows Vista was where this work started, all the way through Windows 10, the big change in the design of Windows, aside from the surface level stuff that everyone sees like updating and all that stuff in Windows 10, has been the increased componentization of the operating system. In fact, for the next version of Windows 10, the one that's coming out in the fall, they're talking about componentizing the shell, the C shell or whatever. It's very interesting because that componentization is another way. Like in other words, you've done the graphics switch, you've done the let's put all the display in the GPU. What else can we do to make the system more efficient? Turn off things that don't need to be running when they're not needed, etc.
What a concept.
But you start with this giant monolithic thing that grows and grows and grows, and now it's this giant pig of a thing. And how do we make that more efficient? And the way you do it is through componentization, and that's been a big part of the work that has occurred over this time period you're describing.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, like you said. The software, and also the software company that we use a software called vMix. And the guys that develop this are brilliant. It's like a 2-3 man crew. It's a very small crew, but they're so adamant at making this thing as light as possible for more and more people to use, rather than just the elite few that have these monster machines. It's a combination of everything, and it seems like this is the maturity of technology, and we're at this point where we kind of understand a little bit more.
There's a lot more to it. I mean, there's multi-threading and applications can be written to take advantage of these OS capabilities that are enabled by hardware capabilities in the CPU, right? Not just multiple processor cores, but also hyper-threading and other related technologies. So it's weird. Like computers really aren't that different, today from 5, 10, 15 years ago on the base, on the surface or whatever. But the little bits have all changed a lot. It's kind of funny.
But the bad news here is that less people are buying new computers.
Yeah. No one's falling for the sales pitch, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because the simple truth is
Giga Machine
actually
5000.
Yeah. PCs just work.
Yeah. It's interesting, but where does the change happen, right? Does the PC do the PC manufacturers, are they trying to come up with ways? Is it a realistic idea that they could change this and have growth at this point? Or will it be a decline and then maybe a slow raise once we get some new technology?
I mean, like, I can only speculate. So my speculation is that we never see a raise over a long period of time. I think we'll see little bumps up. What we should be seeing are bumps up during the holiday selling season, things like that. But I think the over time, over a long period of time, I think the trend is inevitably down, but it could be flat to down, right? It could be a very short curve down. PCs, people get a little freaked out when you talk about this kind of thing because there are fans of PCs who don't want them to go away, and I don't actually see PCs ever going away. And I mean literally ever. I think we're going to have some, but
some version of what we know as a PC.
Yeah. Well, when the iPad came out, I remember having this conversation a lot, and I probably had it with you. I certainly had it with Leo, but this conversation about how inevitably the PC is going to work its way down market to take on some of the iPad's best traits, which you've seen happen, right? Better battery life, simplicity, touch, obviously, the form factors, thin and light and all that kind of stuff. This has absolutely happened. But on the flip side, what you're also going to see is that the iPad has to mature and come up closer to the computer. And look at the iPad Pro. If you go from the original iPad to the iPad Pro, you can see what I just said in a very simple comparison. Do they meet somewhere in the middle? I don't know. I believe in the best tool for the job kind of philosophy. I think that one device that does everything is not necessarily one device that does everything well. And for me, I think we've had this conversation. Certainly, I'm going to be going on a big trip next week. I'm going to bring a computer for work. I'm going to bring a small tablet, which is an iPad, but it could be whatever, for consuming content, which is reading and video. And I'm going to bring my phone because, it's a phone. And my phone has music on it, and audiobooks and podcasts and stuff like that. But it's my phone. It's my primary communication device, and it's the thing I use to connect to the internet and share that connection if I have to with the other devices. And yeah, could there be one device that does all those things? Is that some future? It's a future, but I don't think that's the future.
Is that Microsoft's future? Is that what they see?
Well, there are these hybrid devices that span two of these things. We're talking about one that maybe spans three. Does that make any sense for the general? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe over time.
Yeah, I'm very. See, this is the part of technology that fascinates. I love so many aspects of it. Obviously, I do this for a living, but the concept of the growth and the future is interesting to me. Obviously, we're going to get little kicks during the holiday season, but those are. It's not that it's artificial, but those are kind of expected because things break. People need new things. They're buying it. There's no big reason to go out and buy it. We're going to need a major technological breakthrough of sorts with battery technology or CPU technology. Right. If you look at how this has gone, great example, Apple, right? Every year, I do the press conference and they say, well, the MacBook Pro gives you 9 hours of battery. I'm throwing a number. I don't know the exact number, but let's say 10 hours of battery life.
9,000 hours of battery.
Yeah, whatever it is.
9,000 hours.
But that spiel has not changed over the last
we talked
5,
about
6,
that, right?
7 years.
Remember, I had to go back and look at the previous MacBook Pro announcement.
It's almost the same. That 2012.
And it was literally the same language. I mean, Steve Jobs used the word courage to describe removing features.
And they used it for
and then they used it again, and people didn't understand. I didn't either when I first heard it. Historically, that he had said that before. They were quoting Steve Jobs.
But it's not just Apple, right? It's everybody. It's the PC market. There's nothing special that Apple puts in their computer that HP's not putting and Dell's not putting.
No, Andrew, that's wrong. There is something special they put in. It's magic.
It's magic, yes.
Why do I have to keep explaining this to you?
I mean, pretty things are always better, right? Isn't that how it works?
More expensive things are always better.
More expensive things
it must be better. The thing costs like $1,000 more.
You know what, though? That's a whole different show for us to do. But when I buy a product, for example, what is the thing? I put it on the side. I had to buy this little box called the Grand Stream. It's to convert SIP lines, VoIP lines to regular POTS lines for this phone system. Sure. And I'm looking at the prices, and I found it for $78. And I also found it for $55. I was more tempted to buy the $70-something one because in my mind, well, this
must be better.
It has to be a newer version. Maybe it's a revision. Maybe it's this. And I was like, what am I doing? Let me just buy the $55 one and call it a day. What difference does it make? But people to kind of go back to it, right?
Yep.
I don't think we've gotten this large tech breakthrough over the last, 7 years, 6 years. I mean, a lot has not changed. The last major one was the way that Intel did the hyper-threading. That was a major, major breakthrough when it came to CPU and performance. Battery technology has gradually increased. The next major one will either have to be some, transistor that changes everything or whatever they're putting in there, or most likely it's gonna be battery technology. That will be the thing that changes
battery life.
the
Yeah,
game.
would be a big one. But you're starting, it's funny, you do see that sometimes, right? There's an LG or well, not just LG, but there were a bunch of computers announced at CS that seem to have crazy battery life. And they're still very thin and light, and so we'll see. So oftentimes these things don't really bear
But
up.
has the technology changed, or has the combination of
no.
software? I mean, it's the same thing. Like Apple's doing that
It's a lot of
array. They're arraying it and putting more in to give you more better battery life. But the cells are still depleting at the same rate as they would, based on the amount of performance is required from the PC. I think once we have that big breakthrough, that's when we'll see some major, major change. And, we've been talking about this for 10 years now.
Well, that's, by the way, that's why like an iPad compared to Windows is inherently more efficient because Apple did the hard work a decade ago to shrink OS 10 down so that they could use it in the iPhone, right? And they trimmed off all the fat.
And then they put in this thing with a giant battery,
right,
which is all battery, yeah.
I mean, they've been kind of adding on to it ever since, but the idea is they start with this thing that's super efficient compared, Microsoft has this top heavy thing like Apple did, but their attempts to whittle this down to something simpler have met with a lot of resistance because the thing that's simpler on the Windows side doesn't have any apps or whatever, and so people are a little less interested in it so far, at least.
It's a very interesting discussion to have, and it's great to look back sometimes and see how things are changing, and it's fascinating to me. The whole PC market is really interesting, and the next step for the PC market is an open universe, essentially, because it depends on what direction picks up. We thought the PC market was going to get this big boost from these super low-powered PCs, and we did not see that really happen the last 2 years. Didn't take off like I thought it would.
Right.
$150 buck PC, you put it here, you put it there, who cares? It's disposable, and you change it, but it didn't really take off.
There's so many factors. I mean, it's hard to even whittle this down to one thing. You think about like the business market, which is something like 60 or 65% of the Windows PCs out in the world, maybe. So let's just pretend it is. I think it is. Businesses upgrade very slowly over time, right? But whatever. I mean, if you look at 10 years, maybe there were 2 or 3 versions of Windows in those 10 years, and they're on 1 or 2 versions old. Whatever. At some point, they would buy new computers and they would upgrade. But now, what we see is they don't really need to buy new computers anymore, and they don't really want to upgrade. And so you get in this weird kind of situation. And of course, with Windows 10 is basically always supported. And so like how messed up would it be if there was a company that had, bought some X number of PCs in 2015, when Windows 10 first came out. And so they go from the RTM version, they go to 15.11, they go to 16.07. It doesn't really matter. They could skip versions. It doesn't really matter. But eventually, it's 3 years later. They're still running Windows 10. Some version of Windows 10. Yeah. Obviously, they get pushed off the old versions at some point, but they're still on Windows 10. What do you have to do to make it important for that company to replace those computers? It becomes very hard, right? If you look at the hardware innovations that are in Windows 10, they're not very interesting to businesses. We've kind of gone through the Windows Hello phase. And so, that's a potential upgrade cycle where companies will perceive correctly that biometric security is better. Okay, so we can buy these Windows Hello PCs, fine. But this other stuff, it's like Cortana, Windows holographic or mixed reality type stuff, that doesn't factor at all into businesses. They don't care about that stuff. Like there's no hardware upgrade there. I mean, what's this next gen hardware that they like gotta have to get their work done? I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but that is going to stretch out the hardware life cycle as well. And that really impacts PC sales, over time.
Absolutely. And I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes. Paul.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I do have a lot of questions for you. I want to talk about Windows 10 game mode with you and how this maybe will impact some of these sales because Windows is a lot smarter than it was. But before we do that...
or will be.
Yeah, or will be. Let's talk about Audible. Get a free audiobook with a 30-day free trial at audible.com/Andrew. Paul's a big Audible fan. I'm a big Audible fan. Yesterday we had Brian Alvarez on, the author of Death of WCW, to talk about his audiobook. And he actually, you probably would have found this interesting, Paul. He told us the entire process of how he recorded the audiobook.
What was that like?
He said it was one of the hardest, and this is a radio guy. I mean, he's been doing this for years. He said it was one of the hardest things he's ever done in his career.
I think about this when I listen. Some of the books I listen to are 30-something hours long, 40-something hours long. And if you listen to enough audiobooks, you'll hear in a given audiobook, the guy's voice will change a little bit over time. You can tell when he had not quite a cold, but he was not quite there. Maybe he had been recording too long. His voice got a little rough. I can't even imagine doing something.
It was so interesting because he said that Audible provided him with a facility to go to in Seattle, and so a guy sits there and reads the book with you.
Oh, and do they make sure you don't screw something up?
Yeah, so there's a guy that does that, and he didn't want
all the pronunciations. There must be there are
everything.
Place names and people names that you would stumble over, or
sometimes they do edits, so they'll say like, for example, like he said that he had some revisions in his book because the book came out like 14 years ago, and he wanted to change it, and they would be like, well, you can't do that, like
for example, every single time he said WWE or WWF, they had to change it.
They would have to change it. So it was really interesting how it was. Yep. But he gave this whole story about how he did it, and he ended up deciding to do it at home by himself. And it took him a couple of weeks.
I've seen people have little silent rooms, right? That they go into like a little booth, and they just record. I understand. I mean, it's not. I guess it's not hard to imagine the process. It's just how mind-numbingly awful. It must be terrible.
Yeah, but you have an audiobook here for your pick of the week.
Yeah, this won't be for everybody, to be clear. But I love Norm Macdonald, and I was delighted to discover that this underappreciated comedian has made an audiobook, and it's it's not actually an autobiography. It is like a fake autobiography. So it's called Based on a True Story, a memoir, and it's basically just a bunch of stories. But it's excellent because there's truth in there and whatever. But this was inspired by, he was out on the road and how terrible the road is for comedians. You can kind of imagine that. And he got a phone call from one of his friends, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" And he says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why?" And he says, "I just saw a story on the internet that you were dead." And what happened was somebody had gone to his Wikipedia page and changed it so that it looked like he died, however he died. And he was sort of, thinking about how, like, this is how stupid. And he said, "You know what?" He goes, "All these stories about me are going to come out when I die, and they're all going to be baloney. So I'm just going to write my own baloney stories."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I love this guy. I don't know if you remember him from SNL when he did the news.
No, I love him.
I've seen him live a couple of times. He's fantastic. He's just so great.
He's best friends with one of my favorites, Artie Lang.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I should buy this. This sounds like it's a great book. It's based on a true story, a memoir by Norm Macdonald. Get it on Audible. Go to audible.com/Andrew. Get a free audiobook. So you don't even have to do anything. You just get the free audiobook. It comes with a 30-day free trial for a membership. I want to thank Audible for supporting the show. Paul, let's talk about game mode and what this is. This is in the latest build, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it?
So, some UI for this feature appeared in the current Windows Insider build, which came out last week. I think tomorrow there's going to be a new build, but either today or tomorrow, but probably tomorrow, where this feature will be turned on. And the way that this works, at least for now, is you bring up a game in Windows 10. There's a game. I'm getting the name wrong. A game bar. It's Windows key plus G. I'm just going to bring it to. It won't display on this, of course. Anyway, the point of the game bar is to allow you to record the game or take screenshots, and in the future you'll be able to do live streaming of games. But there's a little settings cog, and if you click on that, there's a checkbox for game mode. And what game mode does basically, it's really simple. It just does exactly what it sounds like. It optimizes Windows 10 for your game. So it de-emphasizes everything else that's going on in the computer, and it gives you priority to access to the GPU and to the CPU and to other system resources. It's smart. And it's the way a game should just run in Windows 10. Yeah. And we've kind of known about this through rumors and things for a little while. But I think it was this yesterday, actually. Microsoft provided a little more information about this, and I think they're going to make this a little more universal. So they're going to add a gaming hub kind of to the settings app in Windows 10 and allow you to control game mode through there as well. So I guess you'd be able to just check off the games you want to run this way. I don't know why you wouldn't want all games to run this way, frankly, but it's one of those things like you hear about it, you're like, right, like obviously they're doing this. It makes so much sense to do this. Why didn't they do this before? But they're doing it now.
So could this work for applications as well and not just games? Is that kind of the idea? If it's video heavy, for example, if it's GPU heavy, that they could.
Let me test that theory right now.
Cool.
So if I go to a Chrome window, yeah. So it's still there, right? You could fake it out, but I don't know why you would do that. Exactly right. But yeah, it looks like you could do that.
Very interesting. I'm curious about. So is it? I guess it's overclocking, right? Or it's.
Well, it's not overclocking. It's Windows is a multitasking environment. It's designed to do bunches of different things at once. It's designed to handle resource allocation as needed. It's all automatic. It's not like it was in 1991. Games require more of the system, right? That's why consoles until this generation have always been basically single tasking systems. They could do just one thing. You play the game and that's all the thing does.
Yeah.
Xbox One and PlayStation 4 don't work like that. They actually do multitask. But of course, the game in those systems is given huge priority over other tasks. The other tasks are sort of like little utility things that run on the side or little overlays that pop up. Kind of like if you go back to the original Macintosh, the Macintosh ran applications, but you could also run these little accessory applets. I forget the exact name, but like things like the calculator. It was the only time the Mac could do two things at once, right? You could run one application and one other thing at the same time. So video game consoles kind of work like that today. Obviously, what you want to do on a Windows PC is ensure that the games are given the highest priority. I mean, that's you're playing a game.
So it's allocating more power, more usage to the application. Okay, so I mean it's
smart. It's obvious. I don't even know why. I don't know why it doesn't work that way now.
So here's a question. Maybe the chairman knows. In the NVIDIA settings, I thought you could do that right within the application itself.
Once you say in the NVIDIA settings,
like NVIDIA now with their drivers have like I want to call it NVIDIA Power Force or whatever.
Yeah, it's whatever the NVIDIA control panel is, right? But that's not Windows. I mean, this is just gonna be a feature in Windows. And
this is a feature in Windows, so you don't.
Yeah, the reason you want it in Windows is because now they're selling games to the store, right? And the whole point behind the store, and this is a hard sell for gamers, but the whole point behind the store is the simplicity, the reliability, the dependability, right, of these apps. And so that's all great, but we also want them to run really well. And now they're kind of adding that, right? It will work for any game, I'm sure, because I think it works for any app. But you want to give people the best possible experience. So they need to kind of build it into the system.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm curious to see how it works and how well it works actually. More than how it works.
I don't know how you compare it. That's the problem because this stuff is real time. So there's going to be a lot of that, like it seems faster, kind of mentality. Like I don't know. I guess, obviously you could.
Someone's going to
put your computer under some kind of artificial load and just even a frame count on the display would probably be enough to prove that it was working. But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a tough thing to measure, I think.
Another talking about Windows again. Windows 7, there's a problem because it's not going away.
There's a problem. Well, by the way, this is tied to the thing we just talked about. Right? I mean, we could just kind of repeat what we said. I mean, this is a problem Microsoft went through with Windows XP, where there were, at some point, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was 50 to 70% of all the computers in the world were running Windows XP, and it was about to expire, from a support standpoint. Boy, I mean, how do you get people to upgrade from that thing? It's tough. And Microsoft's goal was to make sure this never happened again with Windows 7. Well, it's happening again.
We're at 48% right now.
It's somewhere in the 50% range, and so that's 750 million computers running Windows 7. Windows 7 support expires in 3 years. 3 years is enough time, but it's not a lot of time if you're not working on it already. And I don't mean you as an individual. I don't think Microsoft cares about individual computers per se, but the big issue here is that 2/3 of those things or more are in businesses. And businesses need years, especially big businesses, to do these migrations. So We'll see how that goes. But, not the mistake, but the thing Microsoft was forced to do with Windows XP, tied to, among other things, the delays with Windows Vista, right? All the stuff we already talked about, was to extend the life cycle of that operating system past its normal date. With Windows 7, Microsoft says they're not going to do that. So 2020 is it. January 2020. Literally 3 years from this month.
Yeah.
So that's the clock, and we'll see how it goes. And the thing is, I look back over the past 3 years. If you look from, I guess it would be 2014, 15, and 16, Windows 7 usage has gone down less than like 5 percentage points. Like it hasn't been completely steady, but it has declined at a slower rate than the PC industry has, for example. That's amazing.
Considering, how many versions of Windows have come out.
Yeah, and the improvements and
8.8.1,
all the modern
yeah.
hardware. I mean, everyone involved in this industry is doing everything they can to screw over Windows 7, right? They tried the stuff with the Skylake chipset. We're not going to support Windows 7 anymore going forward, and then they had to kind of cave on that. But Kaby Lake and going forward, I mean, officially, they're doing everything they can to kick that thing out to pasture, even though Microsoft has to maintain their posture.
You want to hear something really bizarre that I got? I wish I could show this. I wonder if I can. Mm-hmm. I got on my Windows 7 machine that I actually couldn't upgrade to I can't upgrade to Windows 10.
Okay.
The installer crashes every time. I got to change I don't know. If I put a new hard drive, I'm sure I could get Windows 10 on this, but it's not crucial because this is just a Skype machine here. Yep. I had Windows try to do an update to Windows 10.
Oh, they tried,
randomly. It just
so
it in,
you mean
God knows how long.
Recently.
It did it like last night. Yeah.
Yeah, so this actually happens and it confuses people, but if you tried to upgrade to Windows 10 in the past, it will keep trying, right? And so people will say, "But wait a minute, like Windows 7 or the Windows 10 free upgrade is over." It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You got in under the wire.
Yeah.
It's going to keep trying to do it. And supposedly what it's tied to, although I think Microsoft's ability to understand this with Windows 7 is probably less than it is with Windows 10, is they can look at what the blockers were on the upgrade, and if those things have resolved, supposedly they'll try again, and supposedly it will be successful.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't successful.
This is why they
for
collect
me.
telemetry data.
It wasn't successful for me because it failed again, but I actually came downstairs to it reverting back to Windows 7.
Yeah, so if you're lucky, you'll spend the rest of your life watching that happen and being unable to use your computer while it tries and fails.
Yeah, you know what? It's been very good at going back. So I had that happen yesterday, but I'm on Windows 7 on this one, and you know what? I don't need to upgrade because all I use it for is Skype. That's it. Just another Skype box for me. There's nothing mission critical about, running the latest version. So, Paul, before we wrap up, I want to talk to you about this Me box.
Okay.
Who is it made by?
I think it's Xiaomi, like the
XIA.
Chinese,
Xiaomi.
So these are the guys that were on track to be maybe the biggest smartphone maker in the world, and they've actually run into some hurdles. But their big claim to fame, in my eyes, is that 3 years ago-ish, they hired Hugo Barra away from Google.
Yeah.
And this was the guy who used to run their devices division, right? So he did the Nexus stuff. And, when they introduced like the Nexus 7, which was awesome, probably the Nexus 5, I don't remember exactly when he left, but he was the guy who would come out on stage and talk about these devices. And I always really liked his presentation style. I thought he just seemed like a good guy and knew what he was talking about, et cetera. So he was hired by this Chinese company to allow them to expand into the U.S. market and probably Western Europe or wherever else, because you can't buy their phones here in the United States today.
Okay.
That has never happened, but as sort of the first steps into the U.S. market, if you go to their website right now, and if you start browsing around, what you will discover is that you can learn everything about everything they make, but the only things you can buy are little battery packs and little kind of accessory type things, and the Me box.
And the Me box,
like, that's literally all you can buy in the United States.
So interesting.
But the
you
reason
can see the phones that they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you click like see how there's prices under the power banks? Now go to the phones. The phones don't have prices because you can't buy them.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
You can't get them here. They're supposed to be great, by the way. So someday, assuming they ever do come here, these will be great alternative, phones for people. but we just can't get them today. So the reason you're going to be interested in this thing is it's an Android TV device, and I know you love Android TV.
I used to love Android TV, but I'm still
no, but hold on.
fascinated by it.
This may make you love it again.
Okay.
So obviously it looks and works like a Roku or an Apple TV, Google based. It's Android, which is kind of cool.
By the way, you have a review on a hands-on Thurrott.com.
Yeah, I didn't.
Right?
I mean, it's not like a full review, but it's a review. It's a review. Love the remote. Remote works awesome. Feels great in your hand. The buttons are all obvious.
There's a volume button.
Yep. It all works. It's great. The only thing missing off it is Ethernet, but it has USB, so you can add it that way if you want it. Okay. It does 4K, UHD, and HDR.
Wow.
And it's a Chromecast, because that's how Android TV works. So for the same price as a Chromecast 4K, you can get a full Android device with a remote control.
How much is a Chromecast 4K?
$70.
$70, okay.
Yeah, same price.
Wow.
So if you want like a Chromecast 4K, get this thing instead. It does the same thing.
So
yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because the last couple of weeks we've been discussing some of these set-top boxes, and I've kind of dived headfirst into this weird third-party Android, box. These
NVIDIA Shield craziness.
Yeah, like those kind of crazy boxes, and they're all running Android TV. Essentially, they're all pretty much the same, right? In that case, all running Android TV, all have the access to the apps. We're on there. You know what? Is yours still hooked up? I wouldn't.
Yeah, but it's in my living room. So
yeah, if you can, you know what? If you get a moment, go download the GFQ app. I'm curious if it's there. But these things are essentially running Android 6.0 or even 7, right? The latest version, some of them. And they vary anywhere from $30 to like $300, depending on which box you get.
Right.
It's interesting to me, but I'm fascinated by the fact that this is not caught on these boxes.
No. But that's why this one is so interesting, right? Because Google has had great success with Chromecast. It's the only thing they've sold for the living room that's ever worked. Everything else has failed. All of their Android TV stuff has failed. This device, well, actually, the sad thing about this is about a year and a half ago, Google started selling something called the Nexus Player, which was a lot like this device, except it was, predates 4K, so it's like 1080p. It was a great device. It had a great remote. It's really nice. It's even today. You can run the latest version of Android on it. They stopped selling it after less than a year, and so this is kind of like a modern version of that. I think this Roku/Apple TV form factor is great. I think the fact that it does Chromecast stuff is great because it's a logical step up from a Chromecast. With a remote and actual apps and all that stuff. It can play games. I don't use it for that, but you can play games like you can on all of these devices now. And it's the same price as a Chromecast. So I think this is the right approach. The problem is it's this company that's from China that no one's ever heard of here.
Well, most of them are. Almost all of them are from, they're Chinese.
No, I know,
brands,
but I mean, like Google, Google should slap their logo on this and should be selling this thing. Like this should be a Google product.
Yeah, I'm going to show you something right now. I'm going to go to Amazon and I'm going to put in Android TV. And you're going to see 5,000 of these companies.
Okay. I will look as well as we do this.
Okay, TV. Let me see if I could do this. Here we go. Okay, so here it is. Look at all these boxes. All running Android. Yeah. All running Android. 6.0, let's say, right?
Yeah.
4K. Yeah. This one does 4K for $40.
No, but right. Okay, but hold on a second. Remember, sometime last year I bought this Chinese, I called it a Woku thing, right?
Yeah.
This kind of off-brand, I've never heard of Bomix. I've never heard of Lealbox.
Lealbox, yeah, that's the one.
Dolamy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy one of these things, right?
M9C.
Now, the problem is Xiaomi, assuming that's Xiaomi, however you say Xiaomi, is another one of those names people here don't know. But the thing is, they are actually legit. So that's what I mean. Like, in the same way that Google would take other companies' products and rebrand them as Nexus, they should have done that with this. But there's no reason Google can't do a Nexus player, or I guess they would call it a Pixel player, right? That is this box. I mean, I think this is Shenboxen.
Shenboxen,
like
yeah, Shenboxen.
Some Amlogic, ZoomTech.
ZoomTech. I actually contacted them.
Crazy.
I contacted them and I never heard back. So what I've done actually, last week I emailed like 10 of these companies.
Okay.
I want to do like this side by side to see what the hell the difference is with these, because
look, by the way, I'm sure there's a bargain to be had in here. The problem is, come on. I mean, like, spare me. Like, these things all are based on different chipsets. You'd have to really know what's up with the the Amlogic S912 octa-core, blah, blah, whatever the
It
frick
seems like
that
they're all
is.
using that Cortex A7.
Cortex A53.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd have to understand what these things are, right? To me, as far as I'm concerned, right now, Android TV, like set-top box, there's basically two that make any sense. There's this Mi Box thing that I've been talking about, and then there's the NVIDIA Shield. And the problem with the Shield is that it's expensive. It's $200 for the base version. $200 is tough because these devices are all selling for $99 or under for the most part. Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, whatever. They need an option in that part of the market. The reason they don't have that is because they're marketing this as a game playing machine as well. And I think the $200 version comes with a remote and a controller, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just not 100% sure what the market is for what is essentially an Android netbook gaming machine.
Yeah.
In the living, I don't know. I don't know anyone. I've never heard of anyone who does that.
What a Wi-Fi reproducer multimedia is? That's what it says on the description. Wi-Fi reproductor. I'm sorry, Wi-Fi reproductor multimedia 3K 4K.
Wow. There's a $300 version of the Shield.
Is there?
But look at it. It's got USB ports. It's got Ethernet,
computer,
obviously. It's got HDMI out, which is great. It's got a game controller. It looks okay. I just don't, $99 NVIDIA Shield, non-game version.
You know when this should have happened? This should have happened when the original Google TV came out. And they had this announcement that we're going to have all these partners and anybody could install this thing. And what do we get? We got Logitech and we got Sony and then maybe we got, you know what happened? We got another one.
The whole world went by them.
Yep.
Right. So now, when it comes to a remote control in the living room, people have Rokus, Apple people have Apple TVs, and we're done. And Amazon people have, Fire TVs. Whatever. We have sticks that are super cheap. We have little boxes like hockey pucks, $100 or less. There isn't a lot of room for more stuff, but Android is the biggest mobile device platform in the world. It seems like there would be room for this in the living room.
They could have done it. It was very possible, but
I
I'm curious about the one that you got. I'm curious about the Mi Box.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, you can play games on that thing too, but I'm not going to do that.
I mean, it's the same thing, I guess, as a Fire. Pretty much, it's a Fire TV.
Yeah, well, but it's a pure Android experience, right? It's unlocked, so you get updates. I've actually gotten 2 major system updates on the thing since I bought it.
Coming from who? The company or Google?
I don't know. It looks like Google. It's their Android updates, like their Android system updates. Like you get the little picture of the Androids getting work done by the bunny rabbit thing. It's Google.
Interesting,
I think, right?
Very, very interesting. I'm curious to see how. If anybody else has it, please let me know. I'm curious to get the info from you, guys. That's it for this week. You don't have a meeting today, do you?
I do.
You do. When now?
By the way, 3 of us tried to prevent that.
Okay, you have it today.
Yeah.
Right now. Okay. Guys, go to our website, gfqnetwork.com. You can check us out there. We're everywhere podcasts are available. For all things Paul Thurrott, go to Thurrott.com. Go say hi to him. Go sign up. Thurrott Premium, everybody. Go sign up for Paul Thurrott. Guys, that's it for this week. We will be back next week on Tuesday. No, what is your schedule next week? You're going away, right?
Yeah, I'm good for Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday.
I fly Tuesday night.
And our bonus show will be back. Paul will be back with me on Tuesday. We promise. And that's it for this week. We'll see you all later.